Morning students. Today we are going to discuss about drugs acting on renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Okay, so we call that the RAS system or the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So before understanding the concept of drugs which act on renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, we need to know what is renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, what are its effects, and then we can go into the drugs which act on it. So to introduce to the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, I think this has been already taught to you in physiology. So we'll just recap it so that you can understand the drugs in a better way. So the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system involves renin, angiotensinogen, angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2, and aldosterone. So the angiotensinogen is released from the liver. So this angiotensinogen is being acted upon by renin, which is released by the kidneys. The juxtaglomerular cells of the kidneys release the renin, and this renin will activate the angiotensinogen, which will cleave the angiotensinogen and release angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 will be acted upon by the angiotensin converting enzyme. Angiotensin converting enzyme, which is a ribopterin carboxypeptidase, which is an ectoenzyme. It's an ectoenzyme which is present on the luminal surface of the vascular endothelial cells, especially in the lungs. Okay, so especially in the lungs, these ACE or angiotensin converting enzymes are present, and these angiotensin converting enzymes will convert angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Now, angiotensin 2 is the active moiety of this system. So that is what is going to produce most of the effects produced by this renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. So angiotensin 2 is the one which is responsible for producing vasoconstriction and bring about increase in BP. So this renin and the main function of the renin angiotensin aldosterone system is to raise the BP in the body. Okay, so it increases BP or blood pressure by one method is by causing vasoconstriction or smooth muscle contraction leading to vasoconstriction. Another way by which angiotensin 2 produces this effect is by increasing the release of aldosterone. So it acts on the adrenal glands, zonal glomerulus of the adrenal glands, and produces aldosterone, releases aldosterone, and this aldosterone, the effect of aldosterone is to cause reabsorption of sodium and water from the kidneys. So this is how the body tries to raise BP with the help of renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So in this system, renin plays a very important role. It is a limiting factor which is secreted by the juxtaglomerular cells, and our angiotensin 2 is an octapeptide, and we will be discussing the drugs which will be acting on this system. So, to understand this, you have to know that renin-angiotensin system is not only present, it is not only dependent on kidney and liver and other things. There are tissues which can produce locally. They can produce angiotensin 2 locally and bring about the effect of angiotensin 2 locally also. That's why we have extrinsic local renin-angiotensin system and intrinsic local renin-angiotensin system. So intrinsic local RAS system is present in the heart, blood vessels, brain, kidney, and adrenals. So these organs have local renin-angiotensin system where they have the capacity to synthesize all the components of RAS and produce angiotensin 2 within the cells, which diffuses into the locally and produces the effect of angiotensin 2. Now, these systems, especially the renin-angiotensin system, is instrumental in regulating the organ functions like cell growth, cell death, and remodeling and fibrosis. So these are some of the effects of the renin-angiotensin system. Now, to give a little bit more in depth about renin and prorenin. So previously they were considering renin is released as a pre-pro protein, pre-prorenin, and from that there is a prorenin and renin which is released. Now this prorenin was initially thought to be an inactive form which gets converted to renin, and renin is the one which produces effect. But nowadays they realize that prorenin is also active that also produces a lot of effects in the body, and they have started studying it, especially in case of diabetics and patients who are having long-run diabetes. Prorenin levels are very high and is found to be producing certain effects. So to understand that, we just go through a little bit about prorenin also, and then we'll discuss about the drugs. Okay, so this prorenin is released along with renin, and the concentration of prorenin which is released is much higher compared to renin. Okay, and this prorenin which is released gets activated by two methods, two ways. One is the enzymatic activation, other is the non-enzymatic activation. So when it comes to enzymatic activation, it is a irreversible form of activation. So that means when it is enzymatically activated by enzymes like proconvertase and cathepsin B, what happens is the prorenin which is broken down, it gets converted to renin. So when it gets converted to renin enzymatically, it cannot be reversed back to prorenin. So that's why this is a irreversible way of activation of prorenin. So enzymatic activation is a irreversible activation of prorenin. It's activated to renin. Okay. So you can see in this. So in the first picture, in picture A, you can see the enzymatic activation of prorenin. So what happens is when the proconvertase or cathepsin B, enzymes like proconvertase or cathepsin B acts on prorenin, the propeptide is released and renin is released with its catalytic site exposed. So renin gets activated and hence a breakdown of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Whereas in the second image, that is the second B part of the image, you can see that the prorenin is getting activated non-enzymatically. So how? So I just told you about the enzymatic activation. So now I'll tell you how non-enzymatically the prorenin is getting activated. Non-enzymatically, if you see, the prorenin will get attached to the prorenin receptor. This prorenin receptor will bind both prorenin and also renin. It can bind both prorenin and renin. So that's why when it is written, the pro will be written in brackets. When you see the way how prorenin receptors are written, you will see that the pro is written in brackets because it binds both renin and prorenin. So when renin binds to prorenin receptor, the activity of renin is increased by several folds. So now in the non-enzymatic activation of prorenin, you see prorenin receptor binds prorenin and activates the prorenin and exposes the catalytic site. So thereby angiotensinogen is broken down and angiotensin 1 is released. But the difference between enzymatic and non-enzymatic is that when prorenin binds to prorenin receptor, it can be released as prorenin itself and it is reversible. That means prorenin remains as such. So that is why it is called as a reversible way of activating prorenin. Okay, so the ratio of prorenin to renin is markedly elevated in cases of diabetes. Diabetes patients, they will have marked elevation of prorenin. Now, why we are reading about prorenin, renin, and other things is that prorenin also brings about effects in the body. One is by producing angiotensin 2, other is by non-angiotensin dependent, angiotensin 2 independent pathways. So it has two pathways, prorenin and renin. Both of them will produce effect by angiotensin dependent and angiotensin independent pathways. So angiotensin independent pathway, there you can see that there will be intracellular signaling leading to activation of MAP kinases and JAK-STAT receptors and proto-oncogenes. These get activated and leads to cell growth, fibrosis, apoptosis, remodeling, myocardial or vascular muscle hypertrophy, and nephropathy, retinopathy. All this is brought about by these activation of MAP kinases and proto-oncogenes. So this activation can be either angiotensin 2 dependent or angiotensin 2 independent pathways. So this is what has to be remembered regarding prorenin and the importance of prorenin. Now they have started identifying that it is very high in diabetics and it is leading to all the cell growth, hyperplasia, remodeling and other things which are found in these diseases. Now this again just gives you the actions of angiotensin 2 or the mechanism by which angiotensin 2 is bringing about its effect. So angiotensin 2 is a very important. So it increases the sympathetic activity, thereby increases vasoconstriction and vascular tone, increases the BP. It leads to reabsorption of sodium chloride from the tubules, kidneys, and potassium excretion is amplified, and water retention is taking part with the help of